Catherine West.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And the title of today's debate is Children's Education Recovery, but it should actually be entitled The Economy's Recovery, because we know that investment in education is the key to productivity gain. And we also know that with the unemployment rate at 3.8% currently, and the crisis in skills and the crisis that so many employers are facing, that if we could solve this childcare problem that we've been debating this afternoon, we would go a long way towards helping out in many of our workplaces. We also know that, for example, just to take one crisis that the government's been dealing with in backlog Britain in the last week, has been the airports. How many of those airport jobs were done by women who now cannot be in those jobs because of the childcare crisis and the cost of it? We know that in March of this year, two leading organisations for women, Pregnant Then Screwed and Mumsnet, both conducted big surveys into the impact of childcare costs. And of course, the members for Mitcham and Morden, for Walthamstow, Newcastle upon Tyne, and also for Hull have mentioned the impact of expensive childcare. But we know that 62% of parents say that the cost of childcare is the same or more than their rent or mortgage. And in a high-value area like Hornsey and Wood Green, this can just be prohibitive in terms of the return to work. We know that's even higher, that figure for Black and Asian families at 71%, and for parents who work full-time, 73% saying that the cost of childcare is the same or more than their rent or mortgage. 99% of respondents said childcare costs are making the cost of living crisis even more challenging. 43% of mothers say the cost of childcare has made them consider leaving their job, and 7% have quit altogether. So how is it possible that it's cheaper for mums to stay at home than to work? We know that work is a key driver for general well-being as well, or it can be if it's a high-quality work environment. And we know that it's the governments around the globe who are child-friendly and in favour of more women in the workplace who end up having the more productive and innovative workplaces as well. So it's a real driver for the economy. We know from the same survey that's been mentioned on a number of times in this debate, Madam Deputy Speaker, that 76% of women who do not have children has said that the childcare costs are a major factor in why they have not begun to start a family. And I think this is going to the heart of government and planning, in that we do want to encourage families to actually have children, and we will end up having lower and lower fertility rates, which will have its knock-on effect on the economy in the long term. We know that childcare pays for itself. For example, the Canadian government describing it, their $1 investment in childcare meant a $1.50 or $2.80 in return, and calling it a hat-trick of jobs and growth, subsidising childcare in the whole of Canada. And I think it would be very worthwhile the government looking at that example. However, instead of actually investing in childcare, we see in the UK today putting a big sticking plaster and hoping the problem goes away. What assessments being made of the approach under the taxation model, where that is simply not being taken up to the degree that it needs to be? It seems to be a bit of a gimmick, which only a very small number of women are actually taking up. Constituent wrote to me to say that the policy is bad for staff, bad for children's mental health, safety and general well-being, and she's asked me personally to push the government not to risk the lives, happiness and education of our children by getting this childcare approach wrong. The government appears not to have a plan or an ambition and no vision for children or the long-term future for our families. For years it's been turning a blind eye to this crisis, and in the meantime generations of young people being utterly failed. We are currently living in a low-growth economy, and the government needs to wake up to the role that investing in education will play to increase that productivity. Affordable childcare could enable women to go back to work, knowing their children are receiving the best start in life. Stop tweaking with those ratios. That will put even more parents off using childcare if they think that it will not be a good start in life for their children. And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, we know that an early years education, a decent one, has a major impact on child development, and education being one of the most powerful means to overcome disadvantage. Even the Duchess of Cambridge has said, what we experience in the early years from conception to the age of 5 shapes the developing brain, which is why positive physical, emotional and cognitive development during this period is so crucial. And that's my contribution to the Jubilee celebrations. we know that a properly invested childcare sector is good parents and, most of all, crucial for our children's recovery after the pandemic.
Yeah.